Welcome to Locales Unknown. This podcast gives you the tools you need to choose your next travel destination and the tips you want to be able to explore like a local. Here are your hosts, Chris and Winfield.
Hello, everyone. Today we are here with Richard Plana, and he has recently moved to London from Singapore. He's originally from the Philippines, but he has adopted the travel lifestyle, but alongside of a career. So welcome to the show, Richard. How are you today?
Yes, thanks, Winfield. So it's great to hear you both, and yeah, I'm feeling good right now. So it was an honor to be part of this podcast as well.
Well, thank you for joining us, and for folks as well. Chris is still in Mexico. He's living the island life. So welcome, Chris, from across the Gulf.
I'm on Isla Holbox. It's a small island still here. It's at the top of the Yucatan Peninsula. So doing my best to pray to the Wi-Fi gods that everything is going to work out for this episode. But if not, I know, Richard, you're in good hands. Just before we hit the record button, we were joking around about how Winfield knows everything. So I'm sure he'll pick up the conversation, roll with it, talk to you about his experience in London. And I'm just really thankful for you. You said it was an honor to be here. The honor's all ours, man.
Indeed. So, Richard, why don't you give us an overview of your travels and how you originally became inspired to travel and work overseas?
So basically, like it's really my dream, to travel at least most of all of the countries specifically. So yeah, that's my really plan when I started to work. So every time, like I need to save for my travels. So yeah, basically I want to explore and learn the culture of different countries. So that inspires me as well to to visit these countries, each and every countries as much as possible. Yeah.
No, definitely. And I know I share that same motivation and passion also. So tell us a little bit more about your background. You're from the Philippines. Give us some insights about where you grew up and how you said you were originally, or you were in Singapore rather, before you moved to London. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, okay. So basically, I'm a Filipino. So I live in I'm a Filipino citizen. So, but I work in Singapore like for 7 years. Then just recently moved here in London. So I'm working as an auditor. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's why I mean the decision to move to London is because I want to travel and explore more countries because it's also like one of same with Singapore. It's like an airport hub where you can access to all of the different countries. So yeah.
Yeah,
And for
definitely an international destination there. And you mentioned that not only do you want to see all these countries, but you want to see what the culture's like too. In order to do that,
Yes.
you need more time to really embrace each location. So it sounds like you're doing
sure.
more of a slow travel and really getting immersed into the culture. So that's awesome. So did you have experience in the UK prior to moving to London?
No, supposed to be. I will be. My plan is to visit London in 2020, but unfortunately,
Uh,
COVID happened.
sure.
So yeah, but yeah, things have changed, and there's like this job that I have now in London is basically like maybe the thing that makes me realize that this I can be here. Like I'll be visiting here instead of, I mean, to work and explore other countries.
Sure. Well, congrats.
No, exactly. And London's a great place for doing that, as you mentioned, a airport hub, obviously in Heathrow. And going back to Singapore a little bit, uh, some similarities culturally with the Philippines, obviously very different in some respects. But London is very different in terms of what you're used to back home. So tell us a little bit about uh, living in Southeast Asia in terms of Singapore, and then what you're finding so far. I know you just moved to London, but what you're finding so far in London.
So basically, like in terms of weather, it's almost similar to Philippines. So Southeast Asians have this humid weather, or it's like it doesn't have the four seasons, unlike here in London that you have this winter, like you have experienced this cold weather. So actually that's one of the main difference. And also, so far what I've noticed now is that there are yeah there are quite a few food options in Singapore or as compared here in London, or maybe I haven't explored more yet. So I have to explore and see all of the food options or that United Kingdom has to offer. So yeah,
No, definitely. Yes. And so Singapore is an interesting mix. Predominantly, the population is of Chinese descent, but you also have East Indian and Malay
correct.
populations as well. There's also a fairly sizable immigrant population from all over the world. So Singapore is really a fantastic food center in terms of diversity of food, but also in terms of what are called hawker centers, which are fantastic kind of food halls where you have featuring those three cuisines of the three ethnicities I just mentioned: Singaporean, Chinese, Indian, mostly South Indian cuisine, and Malay cuisine. And often these hawker centers are very well priced; they're quite affordable, but the food is it's very the food is clean. There's a lot of hygiene. The health authority is very they essentially abide by the rules. So it's
Yeah.
safe to eat the food and it's delicious. Whereas in London, it's a little bit different. You don't quite have that, but there's still a lot of diversity of food options. And
Yeah,
what about
that's
where in which neighborhood are you living in London now?
so I'm currently living in like the Baker Street. I think it's more on the west central boundaries. So
Hmm.
yeah, so yeah, mostly like it's kind of like Londoner vibe as compared to other parts like Canary Wharf or more like a city vibe. See, I mean modern type vibe. So yeah, so far I like the place and yeah, the area, the neighborhood here.
Great. But are you staying dry? Because I know it rains a lot in London.
Uh, but currently now, yeah, this week it's like raining every day. So
Every day. Okay.
yeah,
Well,
every
case
day.
in point then.
Yeah.
Right. Now I that's that but the UK it's there's a lot to explore as you know from different going north into Scotland, also Wales, but there's a lot to see on a small island there. Uh, and what about the as you said, it was your goal to visit London in 2020. Uh, how did you arrive at that goal, or was that just something that you decided? Okay, in this time, I want to visit this place. I want to go to Europe.
Yeah.
How do you decide your next destination?
Yeah, normally it's like I planned like 1 year ahead, so which countries I would like to visit. So I mean, considering all the aspects like the budget and uh, the I mean mostly the budget and the timing because of my work as well. So I need to really plan properly well. And also like if I will go to that country, I should have consider also the weather that during that month or specifically that month. So basically like when I planned that supposedly I'll be going to London and Russia during the
Hmm.
2020. So I mean that two countries would be like for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm.
my initial plan. However, that COVID happened. I already booked everything, but sadly, I mean, luckily I have refunded. I mean, I was refunded by it, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sadly, I was not able to visit uh these two countries before. So yeah, that's it.
Hmm. So, if I'm hearing correctly, the original plan was to spend a couple weeks in both Russia and London during 2020, but of course, everything happened with the pandemic, so that switched, and now you've moved your residence over to London. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. That's right.
Okay.
So I moved. Yeah,
And where were you planning to go in Russia, or are you? Because I'm assuming you have moved your plans forward a year.
yeah. Supposed to be my plans is like going to St. Petersburg or and Moscow. So the two parts of Russia, and yeah, I mean that's the initial plan, but I haven't been to completely plan the other parts of Russia. So
No, indeed, and I mean, Russia is when we say it's the biggest country in the world, it's an
yeah,
understatement because it truly does span four time zones, I believe. So it's uh, it's absolutely massive. But St. Petersburg and Moscow, places I've always wanted to visit as well. Of course, the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, you could be in there for half a week. It's even bigger than the Louvre. It's absolutely breathtaking from what I've heard. And St. Petersburg, very European style city in terms of architecture. And I know that you could easily spend a few weeks there along with Moscow. So
yeah.
that's interesting. So how did you? Because England and Russia are they're relatively close, but how did you choose those destinations for this year? Did you have something specific you wanted to see in both?
I mean, aside from the like those churches or chapels, like those
Mm-hmm.
tourist spots, I would like to try their food as well. Because
Mm,
I mean, seen in YouTube videos or other like other videos this I mean this the interesting places or interesting parts of both of these countries. And also like because I'm a Filipino, we need we require some visa to certain countries.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's one of the consideration as well when I choose this country. So basically, if I go to London and Russia, I would only previously when I was in Singapore, I would only need the a UK visa because for
Mm.
Filipinos we can get an e-visa for Russia.
Oh,
So yeah, so I mean
very,
I can
very
only need
good.
yeah.
No, that's a key point because for Americans, and I've been through this process, getting a visa for Russia takes quite a bit of time. You also have to list every country you've ever been to and the year you went to that country. So I did
Wow.
quite a bit of.
Yeah,
It took me a while
ma-
to piece that together. I had to pull out my old passport,
correct.
but so that's interesting. An e visa for Filipinos to Russia, but then obviously applying because you'll be working in the UK and living there. And tell us a little bit about the visa process to move to the UK. Was it difficult? What was it pretty streamlined? What were your thoughts about that?
So far, like since my when I move before I move here in London, I have already a job. So my company
Hmm.
sponsored me. So they have engaged a third party lawyer to help me in the process. Yeah, but
Hmm.
as what you mentioned, like same with Russia, the application form is really long. So you need to put everything, all the countries that you have visited. So I need to check all my passport and my Instagram photos so that I would list down everything. So I would not
Right,
forget any countries that I visited or any yeah places that I visited during that particular date.
right. Because if you don't find it, they will.
Yeah, correct.
Especially on social media.
Yes, correct.
No,
So if I
that's
can jump in, how long did that process take you, Richard? And I know that you were already sponsored by the company, which probably streamlined it. From my experience with several friends in New York when I lived there, they had a similar process. But I think it's always important to tell people about a time frame because what might belong to us might be relative to somebody else. So how
Mm.
long did that take you?
So it took me I think 13 after I applied for the visa. I mean after I submitted my all my
Mhm.
requirements through the lawyer that the company sponsored. So they it took me around 13 working days to receive my visa, my working
Oh,
visa.
okay.
hmm,
Yeah, so yeah, then after that one, when I arrive here in London, I need to get the ID, which is like the the other supporting like that you are a residence here already. So yeah,
Sure.
hmm,
it's maybe the lawyer that helped me is very proactive in in responding to me despite the time difference. That's why
Mhm.
the process is quite fast as well.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to say
Mm.
only 13 days there. I was thinking more on the couple of months line. And then Winfield, just as a side note, because you mentioned it before, and obviously as an American going to Russia, things might be a little bit different than coming from a different country. But how long did your visa process take?
So I had to go pick up an application, and I went to the consulate in Sydney, Australia. I was actually living in Sydney at the time, and I'd filled out an application previously online, and then I gave them my passport. But there was a holiday in between there. It was a Russian holiday,
Mhm.
so I think it was a little bit delayed, and I was cutting it close because I had to leave soon, within the month. But I think it took about 2 weeks as well. But keep in mind, for Richard, that's a working visa, which typically is much longer. And for a
Yep.
tourist visa, it typically, if you meet all of the criteria, i.e., you fill out the form correctly and completely, it's more streamlined. But for, as you said, if you engage a lawyer and you have a sponsor, that's definitely a preferred way to go. I actually tried to procure a freelance visa in Germany this past year, March 2020, right when COVID hit.
Mhm.
And I remember going into the visa office in Germany because you can obtain the visa once you're in country. And they wanted everything under the sun. And you can look at blogs online, but they only go so far because every person's case is different. And
Sure.
so as soon as I did that the first time, I was a little discouraged. And then I came back, I think a few days later, got an appointment, and started talking with them. And they basically said, well, we're shutting down for COVID, so good luck. So that's obviously an extraordinary circumstance, and that shouldn't dissuade anybody from trying to become this is essentially a digital nomad visa equivalent. It's called the Freiberufler in German. So
Mhm.
don't be dissuaded by my experience because it was very much of a one-off. Obviously, COVID has it's a novel virus, and we haven't really dealt with anything like that, at least in our lifetimes. So you should definitely try to look into that more. I know new countries as well this year that have issued digital nomad visas: Estonia, Georgia,
Yep.
Barbados. So there are quite a few options out there if you're looking to travel and to work at the same time, which is exactly what Richard is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. We should definitely do a whole nother episode on just the process of visas. And Richard, we'll have to pick your brain more about how to go through that, whether it be through a company sponsored one or just solo or the digital nomad one for sure.
Definitely. So, tell us a bit more about living in the UK. Did you want to use that as a base because English is the lingua franca, the language of business, and you didn't want to have to learn another European language or even learn Russian? Or did you just what was your inspiration for London?
Yeah, basically, I have friends, quite a few friends who are also auditors here in London, working
Mm,
in London. So basically, as compared to Southeast Asian or Asian countries
mm-hmm,
generally, the culture, the working culture, if you are an auditor, is much better. It's better here in like a European or London, and as compared to Asian countries. And yes, you're right. I don't have to learn another language or to read any other languages for me to audit these companies or this documents. So yeah, I mean it would be an easier path for me
mm-hmm.
as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, definitely.
Was this the first time you've been to London, Richard, when you
Uh,
moved for the job?
yes, it's my first time in London. So when I arrived here, it was really like very new to me. And I mean, there's an excitement, but quite like have that fear, but yeah, more on an excitement part. So
Absolutely. I mean, there's always a little bit of fear and a whole lot of excitement whenever you go to a place, but most of the time we're talking about on a quick vacation or a
Correct.
tourist visa where you're in and out. But you picked up and moved your wife to London, to a place that you've never been to, already committing to a certain amount of time. So
Mm.
can you talk to us a little bit about the feelings leading up? You didn't even know whether or not you like it. Obviously, your friends would probably give you the inside scoop of how London really is.
Yeah, so far, like I mean, when they told me about the what do you call it, the working culture, the clients, they said, because my friends also work in Asian countries, so before they moved to
Mhm.
London, so they have really pretty much the same experience as with me. So yeah, and also I've heard that they have this. I mean, if I want to become like a permanent resident or like a citizen in that country, I think London is one of the, I mean, fastest route to become like a permanent resident or a citizen. So yeah, that's one of also my consideration, and that's why I transferred and work here in London.
Nice.
Oh, definitely. And you mentioned working culture, which is a key distinction because, well, both Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia is a very, I would say, traditional environment. I personally worked. I did work in the Philippines for a while. I worked in Japan, Cambodia. A lot of hours, but a lot of face time, and you really have to be in front of your manager or sitting next to uh, your manager and being there and following their lead. Whereas I feel like there's a little bit more autonomy in the West, and the hours are different. But as long as you get your work done, you feel a little bit more leeway. Do you think that's true?
Yes, correct. It definitely that's really the main difference. So yeah, it's really the working culture that's what you've mentioned that yeah, more on like there are quite a few managers like that they would have like a micromanaging style in Asian countries as compared to like in European or other Western countries that I mean you can have the like the flexible working style. So yeah.
No, definitely. And what are you mostly in the office now, or can you work remotely? I know this very dependent on the position, but just in the UK, I know that UK is one of the highest vaccination rates in the world. So is life returning to normal there?
So far I've never been to office yet.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I mean we are
It's the
still
new
working from home.
normal.
Yeah, it's a new normal, but they encourage to visit the office so that you can meet your teammates, your colleagues, and it's really like a good experience as well to get to know them. So yeah, I mean they encourage like at least once or twice a week, but it's not really compulsory. So it's really up to you. So as long as you can deliver all the you can deliver all the tasks that you have been working on. So I think that's it. That's the new normal now. So
Hmm.
That's a good opportunity, though, being the fact that you're brand new, to have the ability to go into the office and put in that face time and actually get to build these relationships face to face might help with the transition and get some tips as well as far as your new home.
yes, correct, definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, that would really help. Like if you meet, especially like the locals here, if you will, if you get to know them, then they will have some tips on or where you can eat some cheap and nicest foods, etc. So yeah, that's really a good opportunity as well.
And have you found the cheapest and nicest food just yet? Do you have a favorite place?
No, not yet, but
Not
now
yet. Still
yeah,
trying to find it.
still trying, correct, still trying to find it.
What about the Filipino community in London? I'm assuming uh, it's pretty large, and there's quite a few opportunities to interact with other Filipinos.
I mean, I've only known some, I mean, a few of my colleagues before in the
Hmm.
Philippines. So, and also some of my like university classmates. So, yeah, I mean, but I think like in terms on in our industry, like as an auditor, accountant, there are quite a few. Like I think really a lot of Filipinos in our industry. So yeah, other than that, I have maybe nurses. I've heard that
Hmm.
here there are lots of Filipino nurses.
Hmm.
So yeah, for other industries, I haven't heard of or met of any yet. So
So that's a question that I had for you as well, because we're focusing so much on your jump from Singapore to London, being the fact that it's so brand new. But it sounds like you were already working in the Philippines and then made the jump to Singapore, already having the job, right? So this is your second time jumping around from country to country, still being able to have that employment and that security as well. So maybe you can shed some light on how that went from going from the Philippines to Singapore.
basically from Philippines to Singapore, it one thing that I mean one consideration that I have made is like the when I work in Philippines, it's really very difficult because I've tried to sleep for like not sleeping for 2 days just to finish the work, etc. So that's the culture in my job. So I mean that's in the Philippines, but when I moved to Singapore, it's better than the Philippines, but still because of there are lots of locals that don't want to work as an auditor. So maybe the resourcing issues which made me decide and also which made me decide that I need to think and move on to another country. And also like there's no long-term plans for me because I've tried to apply in Singapore like as a permanent resident, but I don't know what criteria they are looking at. So yeah, I feel like there's no long-term plans if I want to stay there for long in Singapore. So that's why also move here in London.
That
Yeah,
that
nice.
makes sense. Go ahead, Chris.
No, Scott, I was just going to comment on the fact that, going from the Philippines to Singapore might have been a little bit of a shock as well. I mean,
Mm,
I'm going to out myself and say I haven't been to the Philippines or I haven't been to Singapore. But I've hovered in the region of Southeast Asia, and I picked my countries because I was a budget traveler. So if I had to spend more than $1.50 on a meal, I was going to go somewhere else. It
yeah.
was that strict. And everyone that I met that ever went through Singapore mentioned how expensive it really was. So was it a little bit shocking when you first got to Singapore to see how things were different there? Or I mean, now that you're in London, you're used to it, maybe, but I would imagine that it's definitely different when you first walk in.
Yeah, it's really difficult when I first like step uh, to work in another country. So like the adjustment in terms of where would I eat, where would because I mean I only knew one person when I moved to Singapore. So
Mm.
yeah, so I need to explore and more time to research in where to eat, where to go, or how to go there from this direction to another place. So it's yeah, I mean it really I think it really took me a while to adjust when I moved from Philippines to Singapore as compared to yeah, as what you mentioned when I moved from Singapore to London. So I've
Sure.
known how to adjust already in terms of like another culture or another country.
Well, you mentioned that you had one friend in Singapore, and now you already have a bunch of friends in London. So I'm assuming wherever the next destination is, you'll already have a whole crew of people waiting for you. So it'll be
Yeah.
easier and easier and easier. But man, just listening to you, you have such a spirit for adventure. And Winfield, you've made these transitions between countries long term as well for work purposes. So yeah, I myself have not. I'm more just popping in, popping out, enjoying that traveling lifestyle. But my hat goes off to anyone that goes through that process, and it sounds intimidating to me.
Mm.
To just pick up, move your life from one destination to another permanently, especially because you haven't been to the country before too. So it's very impressive to hear.
No, it definitely meets with a certain personality type, and by and large.
Yeah.
But and what you were saying earlier, Richard, I think is interesting as well, because I worked in Singapore for a while.
Mm.
I worked for a law firm there just for a short stint. That's actually where we met our mutual friend Mark
Yeah.
when I was working in Singapore. And I went through the same process of obtaining a working visa just for a very short stint. I had to go to the foreign office and get a card that's laminated. You know the drill.
Sure.
But it's true that first of all, there were a lot of Filipinos living and working in Singapore, but there wasn't really a path forward to any type of long-term residency. And I heard that from multiple people. But I also heard that it was very close in terms, a little bit culturally, but also about a 3-hour flight. So it's easy to get back and forth. And some people liked it because of that proximity. So to take the next step and move somewhere that's a 12 or 13-hour flight away, in some ways that takes even more courage, just the distance and the time zone of being further away from family and friends. That's something that I know that living in Asia, I felt isolated from people just because I was so far, not even the culture or the environs. But how have you felt about that?
Yeah, basically like I mean it's one of my consideration when I move here is that like I will be like 13 hours away of by flight to my family. But yeah, I've talked to them and explained to them that this is really also what I want. And yeah, actually like my family is also supportive with all my decisions. So yeah, I don't think there's I mean it's really difficult because I mean if I want to go back in like in Philippines for example like for a holiday, then I can go back I mean anytime as long as like I need to save because I mean I'm trying to earn miles as well so that I can have like a free flight, round trip flight, so
Mhm.
it
Sure.
would not be an I mean the flight cost would not be an issue if that's the case. So yeah, I'm exploring on that kind of aspect so that I can save as well when I go back to Philippines.
No, definitely. That's that's on the foremost thoughts of my mind too. Is every year I think before the year starts, okay, where am I going to head this year? Which airline alliance do I need? Which credit card do I need to get there?
Yeah.
So it's very calculated, but you're right.
Yeah.
It takes
Yes,
some
correct.
planning.
We're
But
all in that same boat, Richard, for sure. We are
Yeah.
definitely. But now that you are so, you have that distance and you're somewhat settled in London, I have to imagine if I'm getting the right feeling from you that you're already looking towards your next travels. So the UK is vast in its own right. Your proximity to Western Europe is there. Do you already have destinations on your list?
Yes, I was already. Now I'm planning for my December Christmas and New Year vacation. So yeah, I mean
Mm.
the problem now is like I need to check, like aside from the visa requirements that I need to comply, I need to check also the travel restrictions. So
Sure.
like for now, like initially, yeah, since my initial plan is to visit London and Russia, right? So I am supposed to visit. I mean, my plan is to visit Russia this December. However, they do. I mean, the e-visa now is currently suspended. That's why I couldn't
Mm.
apply. So I mean, sad to say I couldn't go there. But yeah, exploring other country, maybe other European countries that I haven't been to, and yeah, try to check their travel restrictions as well. If it's, I mean, the best and the easiest way that I can travel this pandemic. So,
Definitely. And there might be a little end around there, Richard, in terms of Russia. And I know this is the case for Americans, but I'm not sure for Filipinos. So look this up. But there is a cruise ship, a boat that goes from Helsinki to St. Petersburg. It only runs from the end of March or beginning of April until October, I believe. But it allows for visa-free access for 72 hours within St. Petersburg for certain nationalities. And this was something that I planned to do back in January of 2000. January 2020. Hard to believe it was beginning of everything before we knew the full extent of it. And when I got to Finland, I realized that didn't run in winter. So so much for going back to Russia. But that's something that if the e-visa is suspended for that, I think it's also currently suspended for that route, but
mhm.
something to consider if if you're looking to do a short trip or something to go to St. Petersburg for a short amount of time.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to research the one that you mentioned. Then, yeah, I'll see if I mean if that one is suspended or not. So, yeah,
Yeah. Hopefully, if it is,
hopefully,
hopefully they open it again because I think
correct.
that's a great way to. And you can sleep on board the boat,
Mm.
so you can either sleep in St. Petersburg or you can be have a cabin or a berth in the boat.
Oh,
So
that's cool. Yeah,
you have options.
yeah.
And in terms of your travel, did you travel from Singapore? Did you go to other places in the Southeast Asian region when you were living there?
Yes, I've been to quite a few like Southeast Asian countries like Thailand, Cambodia, uh, yeah, and also like I've been to Japan and South Korea. So yeah, I think there are quite a few places that I haven't been to because I mean for Singapore, I mean I can also I have also easy access to Indonesia and Malaysia. So yeah, that two
Hmm.
countries, right? So uh,
Right,
I've
and a
been
passport from ASEAN, which helps
correct.
for
There's no
visa-free
visa
access.
requirement. Correct. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and that's especially for that region that helps quite a bit. And what did you find? Did you find some similarities between certain regions? I know in my travels, I found Northeast Asia, there were some similarities culturally. I know Thailand and Cambodia, architecture, uh, there were some similarities in that respect. Obviously, there are a lot of cultural and linguistic differences,
Mm.
but what, uh, what was your impression of some of the places you visited?
Yeah, so far, I mean, in terms of hospitality, I think mostly like the Thailand or like similar to Philippines, like the hospitality to some of these Asian countries as well are good. So well, although there's some linguistic differences, what you've mentioned, but whenever you ask them or try to ask them where is this location, they will try to help you as much as possible, and they will try their best to communicate with you. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've experienced, and also like some of the food as well, like especially like the Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, they have because they are I mean they are connected, so they have the same I mean they have the same food options. So yeah, I think that's one of the similarities that I've uh, observed.
No, definitely. I spent 3 months living in Siem Reap, Cambodia, volunteering as an English teacher. And one thing that struck me a lot about the region is that Thailand was extremely touristy in my estimation. I found a few places that were a little bit less touristy on a Pune, which is a former capital, 12th century, so a long time ago. A little bit off the beaten track for most tourists, but also Chiang Mai in the north. But in general, I felt that the Thailand and to some extent Bali as well. I know Chris spent a lot of time in Bali. They're just you couldn't shake that vibe until you really went somewhere that was off the beaten track.
Mm.
And I know that's a cliche phrase, but that's something that every place has. No matter how touristy a country is, you can find that place. But it's just a matter of getting there and either having a tip from a local or being able to find something in your research that allows you to travel to a place that's not known, that's not as recognized in travel blogs or literature.
Yeah, I would say the same thing about Thailand, even parts of Bali. So I did spend 2 months total in Bali, and the first month I actually rented a scooter and I just drove the perimeter of the island. And for anyone that's not familiar with Bali that's listening, it's not a large island. It took me less than, excuse me, about 20 days. But it was interesting to see once you got out of the hub of the Ubud area, the Canggu, Kuta, and headed west. There were parts over there where it was definitely off the beaten track. I was the only Westerner, as far as I could tell. No one spoke English. It was far more authentic Balinese culture. And then you're right, Winfield. I definitely saw that in Thailand as well. It was more built for that tourist, dare I say, tourist trap setting sometimes as well, depending on where you were. I didn't get up to the north, but I was definitely in some places that I felt that way. And then heading over to Cambodia, Siam Reap, yes, it was definitely built in a lot of ways for Westerners as that entry point to Angkor Wat, which is right there. But it felt entirely different, and it's just amazing to see, how places, whether they are well traveled or not, can still have those very off the beaten track type vibes, as you were saying. And Richard, unfortunately, I haven't been to the Philippines, and I kind of kicked myself for not doing at least a couple of the islands. But do you have a favorite place within the Philippines that you would recommend?
No, no. I mean, if ever like I would advise you like you can visit the beaches as well. So I mean, aside from like the known like the Bali beaches or the Indonesian beaches, Philippines also has a lot of beaches that I mean nice beaches that you can go like the you can surf in our Siargao, or you can visit the Boracay. No, yeah. Also, like if not on the beaches, if you want just like a solemn place or like a chill place, you can visit as well, like Bohol. I'm not sure like if Winfield has been to Bohol. So
I have.
you have, yeah.
Yes.
So that's nice.
The
So yeah,
Chocolate
visiting,
Hills.
correct. Chocolate Hills, yeah, yeah. Those are the places, but I haven't visited almost all parts of the Philippines yet because when I work there, like it's really I don't have really I really don't have time to travel
Sure.
because of the work. So yeah, definitely when I visit there, like I'll try to when I go back to Philippines, usually I try to visit at least one place in the Philippines before I go back to my place to my city, which is Davao. So yeah.
7,100 islands await you, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say, Richard, if you told me that you've been to everywhere in the Philippines, I would have been very impressed.
Uh, I've been to few places only, so
Now, Philippines, I actually lived in Manila for 6 months in BGC, Bonifacio Global City, for listeners in Manila, which is a lovely little enclave, very westernized, but it's a welcome respite from the traffic and chaos of Manila. And shout out to Mark, who's actually our mutual friend that introduced us to Richard. But I used to go all the way down to Las Piñas to play basketball from BGC. So I used to hop on a bus for an hour and brave the Manila traffic in order to play some hoops. So it's definitely yeah. Chris is laughing. He believes
it's
it.
dedication, man.
yeah.
That's dedication.
That it was, but no, that's just an example right there of kind of putting yourself outside of your comfort zone and just going into a town or a village that's outside of a major capital city, and being the only person that's not from there, and you're having a cultural experience, playing a game of basketball, meeting people, talking to people. That's what it's all about, and that's what makes traveling great, as you said earlier, Richard, as well, is just having cultural interactions and meeting people organically by putting yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And there's something else, I guess, that when I think of the Philippines, now that we've segued into that, they're not only beautiful beaches, but gorgeous mountains in Luzon, which is the main island. So if you ever go, I know you'll get there someday, Chris. Go up to Baguio. Baguio is absolutely gorgeous, and there are these this rice terrace it's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The name's escaping me at the moment. You might recall, Richard.
It's Banawe rice
Yes,
terraces.
Banawe. There we go.
Oh.
I knew it was another B. Banawe.
Banawe,
Absolutely stunning. And this, I mean, talk about a rough ride. It's an 8-hour bus ride from Manila overnight, and these roads are hairpin turns all the way. But when you get there, it's like nothing you've seen anywhere. And I've seen rice terraces in other parts of Asia that are impressive. Don't get me wrong, but these are just nothing comes close in my mind.
I think now Baguio you can travel already from Manila for I think 4 to 6 hours because of
Oh,
the new
okay,
road. Yeah, there's no
much better than when
new.
I was there.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
so it's not eight
Half the
hours
time.
anymore. Correct. At the time, yeah, when I visited there as well, it took me
Hmm.
8 hours by bus. But now there's a new road, and it's
Hmm.
a newly opened road to Baguio, so it's faster and yeah, you can be there like maybe 4 hours if you took the bus overnight. So yeah.
No, that's fantastic. But what also struck me there is the climatic difference because you're at elevation. Manila is so hot and humid. In the mountains, you feel like you're in a totally different country. You feel like you're in a place that's 20 to 20 to 25 Celsius or 60 to 68 Fahrenheit year round. It's gorgeous.
Mm.
And it culturally and every aspect, it's so different. So, and that's just Luzon. That's the main island. And then up north, there's a lot more to see too. There's there's just I could go on and on about the Philippines, but we have to save that for another time, right, Richard?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in any case, we're going to move into our signature lightning round now, where we ask you 10 questions. And are you ready to start?
I think I have no choice, right? So yeah. So
Don't worry,
yeah.
they're not difficult at all.
Is this when you
So
start getting technical difficulties, Richard? Is this when your
Yeah.
Wi-Fi cuts out?
Yeah, it started to like the internet connection was
Yeah,
stopped.
just blame it on the London rain. It's okay. Something happened.
Yeah.
so one wish, what would it be?
Uh, uh, Normally one wish is like to travel with my family in a winter country. It's because they haven't experienced like a snow. So I mean that's really
Mm,
my wish to travel with them in a winter country. So yeah, I think that's it.
very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be a shock. First time seeing
Mhm.
snow. It's fun at
Yeah.
first, but then you have to live with it. So,
Yes, correct.
which country do you want to visit the most and why?
Which country do you visit the most? I mean, if I want to visit again, like Iceland.
Hmm.
So basically, like I've been to Iceland for 7 days only. So I think I haven't been to other parts of the Iceland. So I think I need to visit again and explore Iceland more and spend more time there. So
Hmm. Mm-hmm. No, definitely. What's one thing in the Philippines that you would still really like to do, or a place you'd like to visit?
uh, I think maybe like exploring some of I mean, maybe to eat more and more of the local foods because in the
Hmm.
Philippines like each of the places or the towns or the cities have this like have these foods stay significant food that they can offer, like for example in Bohol they have this like a calamay that's what they call like a sticky brown sugar thing. Then
Mm-hmm.
like in Bicol, it's a Bicol's Express. So I would like to eat more of the local foods there.
Yes, isn't Bicol where the food is a bit spicy? I remember in Legazpi, I had
Yes,
some
correct.
considered spicy food, which I didn't think was spicy by Indonesian or Malaysian standards, but for Filipinos, it was very spicy. So I
Yes.
thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
What's the strangest thing you've eaten?
Strangest thing that I've eaten, maybe like in Myanmar, we tried that like a beetle, like a
Mm.
snack.
Ooh, okay.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, I don't like it, but I tried it for the sake of trying it. So, yeah, I think that's the strangest thing I've eaten so far during my travels.
Oh, very good.
Interesting. What did that taste like?
Yeah, I couldn't recall, but because after I tasted it, like I throw it I think everything in it. So
I
uh,
so not too good then.
yeah, not for me. I mean, my taste it's not too good for me.
Sure.
The one thing that my answer to that question when I was asked that was balot,
Oh,
and
bala.
I
Okay.
was trying to explain that on the air, doing it delicately. It was a little difficult, but I know that you know
Yeah.
exactly what that is.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about the Philippines or about the, let's say, the Southeast Asian region as well? Because I know you spent a lot of time in Singapore.
Uh, Favorite thing, maybe the for me it's the really the people. So basically, like if you I mean if you try to meet the people there, like especially in Southeast Asian countries, they are really for me like I mean nothing, no bias because I'm an Asian. So I mean I just want to I mean like most of the people that I've met are really friendly and they really try to help you. So I mean maybe I'm lucky when I get to travel to these countries that I've met these these few people. So yeah, that's one thing that I can when I visit to other countries.
Definitely. No, that's exactly right. I think that's what
Mm,
really makes travel special is being able to interact with people and different types of people than you would interact with in your daily life. Meeting people
mm.
from different walks of life is really interesting for me as well. And what's a must-see attraction, uh, not only in the Philippines but also in the Southeast Asian region? Someplace you really recommend people to visit?
Mm. Yeah, I think if for me it's yeah, if I want to visit like maybe I would be biased again like in Singapore. I mean if those that who haven't visited yet uh like Asian countries or those who would like to travel in Asian countries first. I what I recommend Singapore in terms of like because the place is really safe and like really clean and beautiful. So yeah, I mean and you can travel the whole Singapore for just a few days because it's a small country. So yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And there is quite a bit to see there in a small radius. But as you said, it's really easy to get around and
correct.
very convenient.
Yeah,
What is one tip that you have for travelers?
yeah, you should really plan when you travel. That's really my mantra. Like you really need to plan when you travel because planning like if you really plan, then you can visit. I mean, you can spend really good time in that country or that place, and you can also save if you really plan well. So, yeah, I think that's the like really to plan well.
Hmm. No, definitely. And what motivates you to travel?
Yeah, my really motivation is to gain and acquire some learnings on that culture. So, because you could not, for me, you could not really learn it through textbooks. I mean, you could learn it through textbook, but not all. I mean, it's real for me. It's more on if you have that hands-on experience or have experienced that one physically, then yeah, the learning would really be easily to remember. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Living history or living the culture through your own being as opposed to just reading about it. That's exactly
Yeah.
that sums it up quite well. And when you travel, which mode of transportation do you prefer to use when you're getting around different countries?
Oh, you mean like if I travel like for a specific country, what mode of transportation, right?
Yes. Do you
Mm.
prefer cars or
Oh,
flying within the country, train, bus?
oh, because like in Southeast Asian countries, yeah, mostly you need to take the plane. So, yeah,
Hmm.
but I mean, if ever I can do like there's a train, I would really prefer like trains because you can just sit back. I don't have that 2 hours to be at the airport or something like that. So for me, it saves time as well. And yeah, for me, it saves time and it's quite relaxing for me if you could take a trains.
Definitely. And long distance buses as well. I know Chris enjoys those. So do I, depending on the locale. Overnight
I,
bus.
I enjoy getting there. Let's just put it that way. No better way, in my opinion, to see a country, just because you get to go through the small towns, the windy roads, everything, and you're a passenger, so you don't have to worry about dying if you take your eyes off the road for more than a couple seconds. But man, they're brutal. They are brutal, and I think we all know that.
No, that's exactly right. And final question, Richard, if you could relive one experience in your life, what would that be?
I think if I can relive, what would it be like? This last question is quite difficult. So,
Take your time.
so,
There's no rush.
so I think if ever like if I would relive, like I would like to. I mean, in each of the countries that I've visited, maybe I would like to i- to include my family as well. Like hopefully, if I have that resources and everything, enough resources, then yeah, I mean, I would like to share it with them as well. So yeah, I think that's it.
That's very considerate.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to wrap things up. And thank you so much for your time today, Richard. We really enjoyed it, and living vicariously through you in terms of moving to new environments and not only traveling, but living and working there. So thank you so much for all of your insights today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, no worries. Thank you so much, Winfield and Chris, for having me here as well. So, yeah, I'm like it's my first time to be like this. I mean, it's my second time to have this like interview or like some sort of casual talking or yeah, in like a podcast or a YouTube. So yeah, I'm not much used to this, but yeah, I'm willing to. I mean, I'm happy to share it all my experiences with you as well.
You're a natural, so we really
Uh,
appreciate it. And we'll have to bring you back on when we talk more about the Philippines and pick your brain just a little bit more, because it sounds like you just have a wealth of knowledge. But in the meantime, best of luck with the new position. Good luck in the new space, in the new country, new city, and everything's going to go well.
yeah, thank you so much as well. Yeah,
Definitely, Richard. Best of luck, and we'll stay in touch. Take care now.
yeah. Okay, sure. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Yep. Good day. So without further ado, we're back with another fun fact today about Singapore. And in Singapore, you can actually obtain a work holiday visa if you're between the ages of 18 to 25. So you can really base yourself in Southeast Asia and use that as a staging point. Great airport at Changi was really award-winning in the world in multiple years in a row. And you can also work and have that experience culturally. I did that during law school, and really recommend it for anybody out there looking for a different experience.
Well, there you have it. Another fun fact about a locale unknown. Thank you, Winfield, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode with us. We started this podcast in the hopes of shedding some light on the various destinations out there in the world that might be more off the beaten path. And we're hoping we're accomplishing that goal by bringing on our friends and our various guests to give us some insight about their various locations and what to do in the areas. So if you like what you hear, make sure that you follow us on all the podcast platforms as well as the social media platforms out there, because we're back every single week. I wouldn't want you to miss what we have coming up. We already have a couple great guests in the pipeline that we are very excited for, and I think you guys will be too. So we are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on all the other platforms. Locales Unknown. Go ahead and hit the search. When you find us, be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button. And if you're an Apple Podcast user out there, please let us know how we're doing. We're building this for you guys. So scroll down to the bottom of Apple Podcasts and go ahead and leave us a review and maybe some comments there. Also on social media, we are very active on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook. We have our YouTube channel, so feel free to go ahead and drop us a line. We have our website, localesunknown.com. You can find all of our episodes there. And if you want to reach us directly, we have our email address, contact@localesunknown.com. Maybe you have some suggestions for us. Maybe you want to introduce us to someone that you think might be a great fit for the show. We are all ears. So once again, thank you so much for listening. We'll be right back here next week with another great episode somewhere out there in the world. Stay tuned.